Hey, hallo, herzlich willkommen, liebes Publikum, in dem Felleshus, das Gemeinschaftshaus der Nordischen Botschaften. Neben Ausstellungen unserer einzelnen Länder zeigen wir die Botschaften von Dänemarks, Finnlands, Islands, Norwegens und Schwedens in unserem Haus jedes Jahr eine gemeinsame Ausstellung. Und da wir nicht wie Berlin arm, aber sexy sind, sondern Behörden, aber Hardcore, bringen wir mit der neuen Ausstellung Heavy Metal aus dem Norden nach Berlin. Wir beginnen den Abend mit einer Gesprächsrunde über Extreme Metal und seine nordischen Besonderheiten. Einleiten wird unsere Ausstellungskuratorin Ika Johannesson, Musikjournalistin und anerkannte Metal-Expertin. Nach dem Gespräch laden wir Sie in die Ausstellung ein, oben, und zum Live-Konzert mit der jungen schwedischen Metal-Band Eternal Evil um 20 Uhr. Mein Name ist Nina Katarina Karlsson. Ich bin schwedische Botschaftsrätin für Kultur und wünsche Ihnen einen schönen Abend und übergebe jetzt das Wort an unsere Moderatorin Katrin Riedl von Metal Hammer.
Thank you. So, hi everybody, welcome at Felleshus. As she just said, we're here at the Cultural Center and event venue of 5 Nordic embassies, the embassies of Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden and Iceland. My name is Katrin, I'm working for Metal Hammer Germany, and the reason why we are here is to talk about heavy metal. Yes, so more explicit. In the following hour, we want to talk about metal from the northern countries, about the scene in Northern Europe, about its history, its current status quo, about how extreme metal from up there sounds and looks. So, as we already heard, this is part of the opening ceremony for the exhibition, the harte Norden, Metal aus den Nordischen Ländern, or in English, the hard North, heavy metal from the northern countries. So this exhibition was curated by Ika Johannesson and her co-curators Silje Wergeland and Þorlákur. So first of all, I would like to introduce you to the person who's mostly responsible for this great collection. Please warmly welcome Ika Johannesson. Yeah, and at first we would like to get to know you a bit better. You've studied cultural journalism and have been working as a music journalist with a special interest on heavy metal for nearly 3 decades now. In 2011, you also published a book called Blod, Eld, Död, in English, Blood, Fire, Death, about Swedish metal. So what provoked your interest and passion for heavy metal? What made you step into the scene and become a metalhead at first?
To begin with, well, it was for me, like for many others, Kiss. When I was 4 or 5 years old, 49 now, so I grew up in the golden age of heavy metal, the late 70s and early 80s, and I've just loved it since I was really young. I mean, I love loads of different music. I'm not just only a metalhead. Is this better? I need to talk this close? Yes, okay. So yes, Kiss for me, and then, you know, the race starts. It starts slowly at first. You like hard rock, then you start dabbling in heavy metal, and then you discover thrash in the late 80s. It was late for me. And then you see these long-haired people on the bus, you know, from Gothenburg, where I'm from, with long hair, denim jackets. They're looking really interesting. So you move closer, like the next day you take the bus and you see them. One of them was Kristian, who has the exhibition down here. And so that's how I got to know the musicians that started, that played in the bands that were to create the Gothenburg sound of metal. So I think my interest in this genre, in the extreme metal genre, was because it came from just seeing it happen. Just, you know how in all music documentaries you see the old punks, like, yeah, when the 70s, when the Pistols, you know, and it was our punk. It was something we had, like, that no one listened to, that created, like, a real strong sense of community. And then it just broke through and became big, and all my old friends, started touring the world, and I became a music journalist, and I've written about music and culture at large for many years now, and when we started writing the book, it was just to I wrote it with a writer called Jon from Klingberg, and we worked on it for 7 years because we wanted to. There were so many questions. I mean, now there's so much that we know because there's been so many documentaries and books written for the last 15 years. But back then there were still some questions, like, did the singer from Abruptum really, get locked inside a coffin to provoke his own, fear of being shut down? I can't come to think of the words.
And did he?
And did the vocals just to make it real? Like, who was Pelle Dead? What propelled a 17-year-old to be so artistically open as to dig your clothes into the ground to make them moldy, or smell a dead bird to get the feeling of death before laying down the vocals? Who was that? It's a child, So that is what still interests me with this genre, because these are genres with many, many layers, much more layers and depth than the outside sees. And that was also one of my goals with this exhibition, to show that, to put it in a cultural context, to show that there's so much more than just horror and gore and Satanism and the headlines and the scandals and the violence. There's a lot more inner travel, anxiety, inventiveness. I could go on forever about this. Was this basically answering your question?
Yes, and all the other three or four as well.
Sorry.
Yeah. So how did the initial idea for the exhibition come up, and what was your maybe vision for it?
I was contacted late last year by Katrin, that you just heard speak, and she contacted me to say, would you like to do an exhibition on metal in Berlin? And I was like, well, yes. That sounds like the craziest idea I've ever heard, but of course, yes. And they basically gave me free hands, because no one here. The idea came from a woman who doesn't work here anymore, called Hanna, who was the assistant to Nina, working for the Swedish embassy. She has a Brazilian metalhead boyfriend. So she had seen the force of the community, seen how the stereotypes were, broken down when actually hanging out with metal people, at least most stereotypes. And so she brought the idea to the Botschafts, and they contacted me, basically I think because of the book, because of the fact I work with Swedish public television, so I'm used to speaking to a wide audience, and also I'm a woman, which is 3 really good things in metal. Basically because there are a few of us, and it's, yes, so it's good to have one speaking about it. And I am very happy to do that, because I believe... also, I discovered that when I did the book, putting it, if we wanted to talk a bit about male and female, when Jon and I did interviews for the book, this is a genre that is still, it was harder, it was easier for me to speak to the young black metal guys than it was for Jon. Let me say that. So it's been, when working with the book, that was a good thing. And also being able to say that if they tried to have any attitude, they were like, well, I was at Tompa Lindberg's 80-year-old birthday while you were in diapers. Which made the hierarchy system in the genre it went well. But so I pretty quickly decided that I wanted to focus on the extreme genres, because, the Nordic countries have always had good metal scenes. And they have had good, varying qualities, trash scenes, but it was first with the death and black metals that we actually created something new and put these countries on the map. So that's why I wanted to tell that story. And also, so if the arch of the exhibition begins in teenage rooms, writing letters to the world, sending your demo tapes, making magazines, it ends with Satyricon, the Norwegian black metal band, curating an exhibition in the Munch Museum. It ends with Entombed doing the music for a ballet show at the Royal Opera. It ends with Finland marketing the country as a metal country. It ends with Obama saying that at this national meeting with all the leaders, talking about the heavy metal Finnish bands. So, and also it ends with this the embassies actually putting on this exhibition. So that's kind of the arch of the exhibition. And I just wanted, that's the story I wanted to tell. And then I wanted to just collect the coolest objects I could get my hands on, to be honest.
Right, that would have been the next question. So what happened between the very first idea and tonight's opening party? So which steps did you need to take?
I could write a book about this. Because getting 50-year-old extreme metal musicians to open their emails, to get up in the attic trying to find that backdrop. My family, my closest, are really tired of me. Those fucking because it's been really hard just trying to find things, because they're often locked away in some attic somewhere, and there's this strange Botschaften Berlin, what's that, you know? So, but then I found a few people that really got engaged and really tried to help me find stuff, and also working in Norway with Silje and Torgrim. So Norway was easy because they know everyone. But the first thing I really wanted to get, that I knew that I wanted to do with this exhibition, was that I wanted to get the first backdrop from Mayhem. Because when I wrote the book, I was at the house of the bass player, Jon Necrobutcher's Stubberud, and I saw that hand-painted backdrop with a pentagram that they drew using Necrobutcher's mom's skis, him and Euronymous. And I'm like, I need that. I can just have crap if I have that. So that was the start of it, but then it's in a museum in Trondheim and it's light sensitive, so I couldn't have that. But as you will see, Necrobutcher lent me some other pretty rare things. I'm not going to say what it is even, you're going to have to see it yourself. Yes, so I just wanted to collect stage clothes, stage props, backdrops, fanzines, demos, photos, shirts, like weapons used on stage, of course, and in photos to look cool. Spike bands, artworks, record covers. You know, it's endless, because this is such a genre of enthusiasm and inventiveness and artistry. And most of all, I wanted to put it in a cultural context from where we are on the planet. Why are there so many metal bands coming out of the Nordic countries? Why do we sound like we do? What is it about our place on the planet, our society? What is it about our culture? Or the culture works for? I mean, I have in the films I've done, I've gone around filming artists from each country, talking about like the Swedish black metal singer in Watain talks about the Swedish poet Karin Boye, Dan Andersson. In Iceland, they talk about a poet, a band from a black metal musician called Thomas in the band Mistyrming, talk about the Icelandic poet. I'm now turning to an Icelandic person, Dagur Stefansson. Yeah, it was right. Yes. Okay, good. And just people talk about Grieg. They talk about Jean Sibelius. There's a lot of classical influences. I just wanted to have people see that there's so much more.
Right. Yeah, we will all walk through the exhibition later and have a look at the different pieces as well. So does the exhibition have any intended composition or any order or guideline we should keep in mind?
Well, it became an order after a while. So I'm thinking, no, I think it's obvious. It's not a super obvious order. It's like it's the story first, with like objects pertaining to a certain part of the story, and then there's like the art section, the teenage room section, and it's not super obvious. Maybe you'll have to see for yourselves.
Right. So you didn't get the Mayhem backdrop, but which pieces are you most proud of or interested in, maybe because of the owning artist or also the story behind it?
Well, it has to be what Necrobutcher loaned me, for one. Should I say it?
Yes.
Okay, so he...
Ask them.
Yeah, well, should I tell you? Yes. Yes, okay. So I told Jörn when it became obvious... I know him from the book we wrote, because long story. So I said, okay, I can't get backdrop from the museum. Do you have anything else for me? And he's like, well, you can have the original laminate for the Live in Leipzig concert. I'm like, you say what? And for everyone else, this is the weirdest thing to exhibit. For people in the know, it's such a relic. And he's like, I can also give you the denim vest that I have that the whole 80s, that's in all of the photos from the bus station in Langhus, the main photos. I died on the phone. And when I came to his house this weekend, because I drove from Stockholm to Norway to pick stuff up, and then to Gothenburg to pick stuff up, and then to Malmö, and then to Copenhagen to pick stuff up, and then I drove here with a coffin in my car. And you can stand in the coffin later to listen to an audio file. But he's like, yeah, I also have this, and I was at Necro's house, he's like, yeah, I also have this homemade battery patch that I made from 2 sheets. Do you want it? I was like, yes, I do. So I love that. I love loads. I love everything with it, actually. But that's just for me. It's crazy that I even have that. To me.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll see what you think.
Yeah, that's awesome. You'll see. What's the goal with this exhibition? What do you want your visitors, I don't know, to experience or maybe even learn here?
Okay, so I've had 2 types of visitors in mind. I've had the general audience. When working as a journalist at newspapers, you always have this expression that, like a general person. Well, would Åke in Hökarängen understand? Which is like an old man in a suburb of Stockholm. That's what you say in the Stockholm magazines. And I was like, what would Hildegard 60 think of this? The people there's a lot of people coming to Felleshus, Germans that are just interested in Nordic culture. I want to make an exhibition that can be enticing and educational for them. So that's the bigger audience that needs to understand this. And for them, I would just like them to maybe get another expanded view on what this is and not just see the horror and the violence, to see that's also a part of it, the artistic expression, and just to understand it. I don't maybe think, if someone, starts liking it, that's fine, but that's not like really the goal. I just want to put it in a context. But then I have the other audience, which is the core, which is me. And I see loads of you too. And I just wanted to get to make the coolest exhibition I ever could with the nerdiest stuff. I have a pickaxe that was used on the first promo shoot with a black metal band called Dark Funeral from Sweden. It's on...
More enthusiasm.
I do see a Dark Funeral shirt up there, so you'll see the pickaxe. They were going through Hagaparken, which is a big park in Stockholm, to do their first promo shoot. It was winter, so they carried like the pickaxe, a sword, like a morning star, a mace, to look cool in the photos, to look like really, which you have to do in the genre. And when they arrived, they got in their corpse paint, they got in their studs and spikes, and as they started shooting pictures, the police came. This is not uncommon in black metal photo shoots out in society, and the police just laughed, like, oh yeah, send us the record, blah blah. So when I called Lord Árni, which is the singer, no, not the singer, the guitarist, and do you have anything for me? I have a pickaxe. It's on my balcony. It's been there ever since '93. I'm like, do you want it? I'm like, yes. So that's the level of nerdiness I've tried to keep for you guys, and I think maybe Hildegard won't really care maybe too much about the pickaxe, or maybe she will.
Let's see. Cool. So thank you very much for these interesting insights, Ika.
Thank you.
All right. All right, and we have 3 other guys for you. Would you want to come on stage? So please welcome Silje Wergeland from Norway, who's also co-curating this exhibition, and Árni Guðnason from Iceland originally, and last but not least, Kristian Wåhlin from Sweden. Right, so Yeah, good to have you here, and we will now do a short talk about the northern scene and your individual perspectives on it. So, Silje, you started your career in the metal scene with the band Octavia Zebrati, and also as an organizer of Hole in the Sky Festival. And since 2009, you are also fronting the well-known Dutch band, The Gathering. But you're also still living in your hometown Bergen in Norway, where you also are working as a manager for Beyond the Gates Festival and Revelations Music, a booking and management company responsible for artists like ABBA, Galsworth, and many more. So can you please shortly introduce the Norwegian metal scene to us? What's there to know about? Shortly.
That's impossible. I was asking myself the same question. How do you answer that question? Well, I guess you see a little bit on this exhibition from the Norwegian metal scene, which what has been. I guess do you want to talk more about the new area, or
what's there to know? What are the most important selling points?
Oh, well, I guess black metal did some selling points.
What's the infrastructure like, or something like that?
Yeah, well, it's a small question, but it's a big answer. Mm-hmm. So I have there's a lot to dig into, but I think you can talk about the bands. You know, the early days, how much impressions they have made. I can make an example, because you know the black metal scene has some bands coming from Bergen, where I'm from. And there is a producer in Bergen who's called Pytten. You might have known about him. He produced some early black metal albums like Emperor, Nightside Eclipse, and some Enslaved, and some a lot. And the thing was that he got a question from, before doing anything with metal, from a father of one of my friends, asking, my son is playing in a band, it's a bit noisy, but would you mind consider producing it? And Pytten said, okay, give it to me and I listened to it. And he got this cassette, and it was like, he sat down, listened for 10 minutes, and he was like, I have no idea what to do with this, but I gave it a shot. So he did. That was Old Funeral, which some pre-Immortal musicians was in. And then he did produce that, and then Mayhem came, Mysterium Satanas, and of course Emperor. And I think if Pytten said no, that time, I think the black metal sound would have been different. Mm. So that's something I think is something that's nice to think about. Mm. But yeah, I don't know what to dig into. Right?
Yeah, maybe are there any festivals we should know about? Any, I don't know, in which cities are the metalheads?
Yeah, of course, there's a lot coming from Oslo, where Mayhem was, or nearby around Oslo. And of course, they have the festival called Inferno, which is also a little bit similar to Beyond the Gates, doing the extreme metal part. And we also had a collaboration with them, actually. We were here a few years ago, 2020. I don't know if anybody else was here. Yeah. And I think, it's not, there's a lot of festivals that's been bought up by Live Nation these days, but we are still independent. And of course, we are not that big, not that interesting for Live Nation, but I think the underground scene is still there. And of course, I think also if it comes to, we have the old bands which are there and we can talk about them forever, but we of course need some new bands. And I think the Trondheim scene has some interesting thing coming up with Terror 2 Possession label. They have like Vemod, a band which is interesting, and Wardham Rife, of course. So yeah,
right,
something.
So there's still stuff to
absolutely
to discover, right?
Yeah.
So Árni, you've also crossed borders by moving from Iceland to Yeah, Switzerland and Germany, where you are working now as a teacher, but you know the metal scene in Iceland pretty well and are also the co-founder of Northern Punk Festival. So, yeah, would you want to tell us a bit about the metal community in Iceland?
It's much easier for me because Iceland is much smaller and everybody knows everybody. There are not many clubs. There are not even many practice spaces. So the community is quite tight-knit, and you always have, what I think is interesting maybe about the Icelandic scene is that there is always kind of this connection from very talented musicians from different genres who are either sharing a rehearsal space or are co-hosting concerts or are sharing musicians. So musicians will be playing in different subgenres of metal. And there is sometimes some kind of magic happens in some of these groupings. So you get like an outburst of great bands from a surprising direction. But when you know, oh, they're sharing a space with these guys, yes, of course. So they're under that influence. We have of course, we have only one city, the capital city, and local bars where you can play. So it's kind of the same bars all the time, like Gaukurinn in downtown Reykjavik, and most often people start recording their own stuff or organizing their own concert, because Iceland is too small for it really to be commercial, so you have to be pretty committed to what you're doing. So there's this kind of DIY ethos that is kind of, you just have to do. So they are, doing their own recordings, and then you get better, and then you start helping other bands record, and then it kind of grows like that, and it gets maybe a certain sound from a certain guy who has a certain technique. So it grows like that. Yeah, and it's like Silje was talking about, like new bands. Through working, I'm very happy to be still working together, like trying to make music, but it's not always so easy with work and doing concerts and making music. But I'm happy to still have friends in Iceland that I'm doing music with. And through this festival that we're the Northern Punk Festival, like a DIY festival we do in Iceland, with 50 bands in 3 days, and we have about 40 Icelandic bands, and it's like Iceland is 300,000, 380,000, and you have 40 extreme bands. It's not only metal, it's like different subgenres, and it's difficult for us to keep it at only 40 because we have so many interesting bands we want to book. So that says something for me about the quality and ambition of the people. And we got, like 2 years ago, we got an application from a young new black metal band. And I remember opening the email, and I knew these guys were like 18, 19. And I was like, oh, do we really need another black metal band?
Well,
and these like young guys, and I was like, oh, they will be doing some, sound like, trying to sound like some cult. And then I opened it, and I listened to it, and I was just like, shit, this is really good. Shit, yes. We need a new black metal band. So that's kind of, yeah, that's a nice surprise, to see, because we've been in this game for some time, to actually go to a concert and see a young band with guys 20 and girls 20 years old just blowing the stage away, and I was like, what was I doing at that age? So yeah, that's the Icelandic scene.
All right, thank you.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell. Thank you. Yeah, and Kristian, you started as a musician in Sweden, forming the band Grotesque with Tompa Lindberg, and you've played in other bands, but mostly carved out your career as an artwork designer, known for iconic covers of records like Slaughter of the Soul by At the Gates, The Somber Lane, Storm by the Lights Bane by Dissection, Into the Nightside Eclipse by Emperor. So what can you tell us about the Swedish scene in a nutshell? As well.
Well, the Swedish scene, as I know it, I mean, I mainly were active like in the beginning of the scene, and then after a while there, I mainly focused on the art. But what I've seen now from during the years is that it's still in progress, and it's developing, and there's a lot of good new bands coming up, younger bands. So it's really nice to see. But for me, I may mostly been involved in my artwork projects all the time, and so haven't been that active in the last couple of years. But when I still meet bands, and definitely on like exhibitions and on gigs. So it's a. I think it's really doing good, because it's a lot of bands, but I'm not so really into this whole new stuff. I don't listen to them so much, but the ones I really like, it's I can't name so many of them, because I'm mostly focused in my art, so it's.
All right, but there are many new bands, and it's ever evolving. And of course, now we want to talk about the music as well. So which characteristics or specialties are important for metal from the northern countries in general, or how does it maybe differ from Central European metal? That will be open for everyone who wants to say anything.
Oh, can you say it again? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Could you just put the question again?
So I was interested in which characteristics are important for metal from the northern countries.
It's more like I think like when you come from this like dark and climate and everything, it's I think it's have a lot of impact on the whole sound and the mood, and I think it's affecting a lot, and it's characteristics. I'm more into like I think it's these kinds of a lot of melancholy, power, but it's still a lot of dark feelings and expressions. But it's like
right.
That.
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying, because I think if with long winters, I'm just talking. I think people from the north will maybe share this experience with these really long, dark nights. Just as a normal person, even if you're not attracted to like darker things, or you're confronted with dealing with it. So even if we have electricity and everything, it's just you're confronted with just you get like you don't have enough vitamin C or D in your body after such a long time. So when the sun comes back up, you just feel it like psychologically, and so that makes you on some kind of psychological level, I think, think about these things. And what I don't know if you share this experience, but my feeling is also that at least in Iceland, when we do music, and you can tell if you feel the same, that you never go under the top. If you're like, okay, is it over the top? And if you have that feeling, you just, okay, then we will really do it like that. So that's like with the HM2, like distortion pedals, like, is this maybe a little bit too much? Okay, then we just everything on full, and it gives you this like, and you're like, oh yes, this is so bad, it's good, So that's, I think, and that's kind of just like where some maybe other middle or continental European music, like, it's a bit too much. It's like, okay. So that's my feeling about it.
All right.
Maybe also has something to do with the harsh nature and the harsh. We are a bit like harsh in a way, aren't we? Yeah, and not so. Maybe, of course, the metal is wide genre. You have all the gothic and more like softer versions of metal. But if you talk about extreme music, it's you talked about the distortion pedal upstairs and with the like how harsh can you make it? As harsh as you can't really hear the sound. That's good. It's a bit like it's a bit rough and hard. And I think also that has something to do with the nature. Mm-hmm. It comes from there. I think if you are in the middle, around the middle, what's it called? Middle ocean. Yeah, everything's a bit nicer, softer. I don't know.
Yeah, all right. In Germany, we often talk about metal from Northern Europe with some cliches about landscape in mind as well. But do you think that the characteristics of your home countries also influence the music there? Is it like that?
Well, it's you have a lot of things. I mean, in traditions and with music and how you grew up with different kind of musical traditions and aesthetics, and I think it definitely influences you. And but it's like you get it. You hear things like from a lot of like from the beginning when you're a kid. I mean, I remember when I was. We had like a house up in Dalarna in Sweden, and we used to listen to a lot of folk music there, and everything like that influences you. And like my grandfather played a lot of grand piano, played a lot of themes and stuff, and you bring that with you, I think, in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right.
There was something that because I've been living outside of Iceland now for almost 10 years, and at some point I realized because I go to Iceland, of course, like every year, and I realized at one point what it was that is why it's so good to me to go to Iceland, and it's the way that the rivers go. And I think this can be like a metaphor for many things with the rawness of the nature, because it's more sparsely populated and you just don't have the chance to organize everything. And I know that's very hard for Germans sometimes, if you cannot, that it's, so the rivers in Iceland, because it's so sparsely populated and only like 5% can be cultivated for agriculture or whatever, the rivers, they just do what they want to do, and they change every year, and they are different every year, and and if you're fed with this kind of natural algorithm, into your eyes and your brain, that is different than if you're used to, like, the river goes where it is supposed to go, and here you are allowed to do this turn, and no, this was the wrong way for the river, so we straightened it, and now it's and I think that also can have some effect on the mentality. So maybe that's one of the reasons why, in my experience, the friends that I have who are making music in Iceland are always about like finding new ways or like new combinations. Of course, you have this also in Germany and other countries, but it's like that's like the basic thing to do. And I have friends here in Germany who will say that they are in a band, and then I realized there's like neighbors and like in the village in like countryside of Germany, and then they're like, "Oh, can I show you my band?" I'm like, "Ah, yes, you're also a musician. Oh, cool." And they will show me like they're in a cover band, and that's not good. So they're doing it the way it is supposed to be done. And in Iceland, you would say you're in a cover band because you're not. And that's kind of, yeah. I don't want it to sound arrogant, but it's just like this. Yeah, it's fine to play other people's songs to kind of practice, but then you kind of experiment with what you can do. And I think this is maybe one of the reasons why, like Ika was describing, that this new death and black metal came from the north and kind of like inspired other movements around the world to, okay, wow, what's this? Yeah.
Right.
I have one more point, and that in Bergen it rains 285 days a year, so we need to do something indoors.
Yeah. That goes for Sweden too.
Right. Okay. So Silje, with Beyond the Gates, you also established a great festival in Bergen. So which roles do festivals play for the northern scene and maybe also for the metalheads up there?
Well, I think at least you are a scene for bands to play, so they can show them to the normal audience, but also to the business people in the music which comes to the festival. And I think for us and for also Hole in the Sky, we always try to, every year, we don't know exactly what we're going to do next year. The festival can be somewhere else, not outside Bergen, but in a different venue and stuff. Always try to look for something new. And I think picking up new bands, you know, finding, having a community of people with good ears and have their, you know, what do you call it, signals out, is really important for a festival to pick up new acts. Like Hole in the Sky, we did a French band that we were asked if they could come and play by a friend in the music scene that we booked another band with. And we were like, yeah, sure, they can come and play. And it was Gojira. They played for free. And that was an amazing show, like, wow. And also we had Ghost. I think they got €1,000 or something back in. And those kind of things, I think, is really important that, you know, that festivals do take the chance to give a band an opportunity if somebody recommends it or somebody you trust or you would like, okay, let's give them a chance. And also being an independent festival is important because then nobody decides who you're going to put on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And Kristian, with your artworks, you kind of shape the look and feel of the northern scene as well. So how important are image and aesthetics for the northern metal, in your opinion?
Well, the paintings I do is like for my mainly to illustrate my inner visions, but in the outcome becomes an image creating thing, of course. But yeah, of course, it's very, very important. I mean, you have the music, and when you listen to the music, you see these pictures and you see the band's image and visuals. So it definitely ties together everything, especially when you try to just capture something about the band or the definitely in the music that connects or illustrates this the essence of it. So, but it's of course it's really important.
Yeah, we will also see in the exhibition that it's a very visual genre. That there are many many things to look at, not only to listen to, but also to look at. I would also be interested in the question if we can speak about something like a common metal scene from Northern Europe. Is there any connection or interaction between the scenes from your home countries? Or do they maybe even influence each other?
Well, it's everyone are there. People, musicians are influencing each other all the time. I mean, it's a give and take and exchanging ideas, and it's I think that's a big part of. I mean, both art and music, that you listen or you see things and you influence each other. So it's I think that happened all the time. So.
Yeah, back in the days you had the letters, the written letters you sent to your friends or to somebody that you heard about, and cassette trading and stuff. These days it's totally different with the internet and stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very different. We had when we started this, we don't had any internet, so it was the post box, you know. So you sent a mail and they got like 3 weeks later you got response. So, but it worked anyway. So, but back then when you didn't have so much communication, you had time to grow some own identity, because you were a bit. Okay, you weren't entirely isolated, but sometimes I think it can be good to narrow it down a bit, because that makes it easier to really listen to your inner voice and get out something. You can get too much distractions, I think, a bit nowadays, when it's easy to become led astray. But it comes down to if you have a strong conviction or some direction in your creativity, I think.
Right.
this is a very good, important point that Dagur from Mesterming, he pointed out to me, Árni, have you noticed since social media that distance between albums is always getting longer? Because it's just harder for musicians to focus on the music. So that is, I think it really is like that.
Yeah, right. One other point I would like to talk about is, the North did not only gain recognition for its great music, but also got known for, as we talk about, church burnings, murders, violence in the past. So which role does this aspect play for the perception of the Northern scene? I mean, does it overshadow the music or maybe even contribute to its reputation?
Well, I think when all this stuff happened, it was, of course, for the people outside of the scene, it was just crazy, and it was crazy also inside the scene. But after now 20-something, 30-something years, the bands are still going on, and the creative part is the most important. And you could see that if you look back, it wasn't that many people who did kill people or burned churches. It was a few. But they got a lot of attention. So in a way, of course, it helped, on the publicity, and you got a lot of attention around it, and the mystic part of it, and all the craziness, and of course, it helped on getting the attention. But if the music wouldn't have been good enough, if they wouldn't have been working professionally all these years, it would have died out. But it's not. I think maybe it's.
There are some. There are some kind of. I hope I'm not distracting too much. Some kind of parallel between the Norwegian black metal scene with this really gangster mentality of being more brutal and more true and more extreme, and American gangster rap that also got really big, and you actually had to be in jail to actually get a record label to take you seriously. So and that's. But I totally agree with Silje that if the quality of the music wouldn't have been so good, and it was maybe some side effect of taking things so really seriously that it had to be really extreme, and just maybe a side effect of this, let's really push it as far as we can go. So but I don't know why it is sometimes this connection between artistic, exceptional, and just extreme mentalities also. I don't know. But you have maybe some ideas on this.
Well, I think in the beginning it's this kind of extreme music. It were a lot of extreme people were drawn towards it, and but the main focus is the music, and I think it put out your demons and in the music. But there were a few people that went over the border, you can say, but it's but that's not it's not for the sake of music. I think it's it's a lot of people that had their own problems as well. So but they were a part of the music, and but I mean the music itself. I think it's not about actually what you're doing. It's the music is in the center always. I think it's but it's a lot of extreme people that draws to it. A lot of it's is more wrongly said because there were quite a few, but I think it's natural. I mean, for the most part, I think a lot of people are actually getting helped by this music because it's a bit like cleansing. I mean, it's you listen to something. I mean, you play something that actually helps you. I mean, to deal with your darkness, and I think that's the main thing that's important here. That it's been very helpful for many people. So
right, and today northern countries are also known for their open and tolerant mindset, also empowering females and queer and non-binary people. So how is the situation in the metal scene in this regard?
I think there is a way to go when it comes to female on stage in the extreme metal scene, but you can't really force that. you know, we focus on it in Björn, for example. But you know, we had a lot of questions. Why is there not more female on stage, and you know, all these kind of things? Like, well, you can't put female on stage just because she's a female. You know, that doesn't make sense. You want to put her on stage because she's good, and if she fits in the context of the festival and everything. But we have to have it in the back of our minds, you know. And also when it comes to queerness, you know, we're totally open to it. We have queerness around us, and nobody cares if you're queer or not. And well, it's just something that came to mind when you said something. At my festival, last year we took it into one of the concert, like a concert hall. Is that what you call it? The hall of Grieg in Bergen, which is a opera house. And every year we have a festival on the venues we do. They always come back to us and they say, "You have the best and friendliest audience. We love to have you. Please come back." Because there's so less violence. Everybody's friendly and helping. And the worst thing that can happen, of course, people get really drunk. Sometimes they take a nap in their seat or something, and then they're just, okay, everybody helps, you know. And I think that's the thing I really love in this scene. And I think, I don't know if that answers your question, but...
You also want to add anything?
Yeah. I would like to connect to what you're saying about this, but connect first to what you're talking about, like women in the metal scene and in the music scene, with that, and also the festival experience with the DIY festival, the Northern Punk we have in Iceland, and like organized with by a crew. We are. It is because we're not just a metal festival; we're kind of an underground festival, and I think. And as you were talking about, like dealing with your inner darkness or negative emotion and this cleansing, and when I look at the underground festival with punk bands and grindcore bands and electronic bands and dark wave and stuff like this, we have the ratio there is just, if you think about it as underground music, there is the ratio male to female is there better. So maybe it's not just the expression of when a woman expresses her negative emotions will maybe not necessarily go into black metal, but maybe go into some other part of subgenre of metal that will be like close to it, but not exactly the same. But it is also the tendency when we're booking maybe for some warm-up show or something. It is important to, if you are booking already 2 bands and 3 bands, and you're going to book the 4th band, and you realize at once, oh, it's a sausage party. It's only guys, you know. It's a Wurstsalat, as you would say in German, you know. And just to stop for a moment and think, like, wait a minute, but there are a lot of good bands with women, and just to stop and not to book a band because there is a woman, but if you notice that it's only guys, to, you know, to just a little bit look outside and see, okay, because there are actually, you know, a lot of talented artists. Yeah.
Right.
I have being a woman, I have some thoughts. But yeah, I remember also when I started my first band, Octavia, we wanted to be really hard. We were so inspired by the black metal scene of Norway and Bergen, and we tried to play as hard as we could, and I tried to sing as hard as I could, and I didn't want to scream, but I wanted to sing really loud, and I thought we were so hard, and then it wasn't really hard, but that's like the female way, you know. I can scream, I can growl, but I didn't want to. But I wanted to sing really powerful. So that was kind of one answer to what you said. But also there's a lot of female behind the scene in production. In Björn, I think we have like 75% or something in the production. So that's something also.
Okay, right. So to come to an end, in the last decades, metal from Northern Europe developed from the raw underground to a highly appreciated cultural export. So we are actually talking about it here in an embassy. So does metal get the recognition it deserves today? And maybe also, how can it keep its identity as an underground movement? any ideas?
Success is a double-edged sword. So I really like what you said about being important, being an independent festival. So you can like focus on the music because you want to book quality music, not only music that sells. And it's not easy for metal to you. It has to be enough visitors so that you don't end up paying for it yourself. So it has to be also accessible and successful and reach the audience, but you don't want to lose this community feeling that you were talking about in the beginning of it, like, yes, we understand it. So it's a real balance to keep when you're organizing something, that it is like open enough so that you have enough people, but still have people that you kind of connect with on this level that you just know we don't have to explain the way we are or the way we think, because we have this common experience that we just like click. And this kind of community is what is, makes the feeling of going to festivals so important. So I'm not sure if success is always so good, It's sometimes, yeah, I don't know.
Right. Okay. I don't know if we have any questions from the audience as well.
I think maybe the audience would know answers to a lot of our questions.
But there's also a lot of people waiting outside because we're going to open the exhibition upstairs.
Okay, so you can also ask them your questions later on when we are walking through the exhibition. So thank you very much, and you too.
Herzlichen Dank für dieses tolles Gespräch, alle Mitwirkenden. Und jetzt eröffnen wir die Ausstellung im 1. Stock und um 20 Uhr können wir Extreme Metal live hören. Vielen, vielen Dank.